Hello and welcome to another video and podcast on fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at a very pressing issue in FPL right now, which is what to do with those Manchester United attackers. Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford have combined for a total of 9 points after 2 game weeks so far, and that's back-to-back blanks for both of them, despite them being highly sought after at the start of the campaign, with nice fixtures as well. A home match against Wolves and then an away game against Spurs, which many thought would suit their counter-attacking prowess, but alas, it was not to be. And so going into Game Week 3, a lot of people have 2 free transfers. There's a couple of midfielders who are really staking a claim for places in people's teams. Foden is very popular this week. Burmo has started the season with an absolute bang. And so there are a lot of people out there wondering if they need to give these Manchester United attackers one more chance or if they need to boot them out of their team. And we're going to have a look at that issue now with a few bits from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. So we're going to have a look at some tables, some heat maps, some touch maps, some shot maps, all sorts of good stuff. And so if you haven't already sorted out your membership ahead of Game Week 3, now is the time to do it. We've extended again the pre-season prices so you can save up to 30% on your membership, and that will enable you to go and have a look at this in even more detail than I'm able to go into today, and of course all sorts of other benefits as well. So let's start off by having a look at the form that these guys have shown so far, because obviously, yes, these players have not got any attacking returns yet, but it is worth saying that you should bear in mind if you own these guys, it's not for lack of trying. So we'll start with Marcus Rashford, who after 2 matches has had 7 shots in the box, which is the 4th highest in the Premier League. So only Haaland, Visser and Odsonne-Edouard have managed more shots in the box than him. That's more than Eze, Diaz, Jota, Nketiah, and Burmo, Jackson and Pape Sarr, who are all tied on 6. And so Rashford has been shooting. So at the very least, he is having a go. Sometimes if you have a player who's not done too much in the first 2 game weeks of a season, and you go and have a look at the fact he's barely having any shots at all, and there's not very many in the box, that I think would be more of a red flag that you need to sell that guy. Whereas the fact that Rashford is at the very least trying, I think is worth bearing in mind. Now, it's also worth bearing in mind, admittedly, that his accuracy is not necessarily as good as his persistence. So the players that are top of the league, or the top 3 in the league for shots on target so far, March on 6, Visser and Burmo joint second on 5, Edouard, Haaland, Diaby, Mopé and Wilson joint third on 4. Rashford's not able to trouble that echelon of the shots on target, so he is having a few accuracy issues at the moment, which you could argue is perhaps maybe a knock-on effect of him playing in the centre-forward role, where maybe he's snatching at a few of these shots, so he's having the efforts, but he's not able to actually get them on target because perhaps maybe harried off the ball a little bit more by the centre-backs. I think we all know that Rashford is much, much better when he's facing goal as a wider player than he is with his back to goal as a centre-forward, and that's perhaps being shown in his shot accuracy as well. So that's Rashford and his goal threat, because that's largely what we expect from him. Let's have a look at what Bruno's done so far. Well, he's created 7 chances so far in the first 2 matches. 2 of them have been big. He's joint second in the league for big chances created, and he's joint 4th in the league for just raw key passes. But crucially, where he actually ranks for non-penalty XGI, so that's expected goal involvement when we remove the penalties from the situation, and of course Bruno's not actually had any of those yet. He is actually top of the league for that particular stat with a non-penalty expected goal involvement of 2.12, and when you put the penalties back in, he is, so you just go for expected goal involvement on its own, he ranks second, and of course Burmo is the one who is top of the league for that because he's had 2 penalties so far. And what that means is Bruno so far is underperforming against his expected goal involvement by a delta of minus 2.12, so he should have been involved in 2.12 goals, has been involved in none at all. And you have to say that underperformance against XGI is hardly something that Bruno Fernandes has made a career out of, especially at Man United. And so my general thought on this particular stat is that it indicates that Bruno should have got something so far, perhaps a little bit unlucky not to have done, and so that means that at some point he should revert to form. He should be able to swing this round in an opposite direction and operate in line with his expected goal involvement again, either by sticking away some chances that he gets and performing in line, like a high XG chance, put it away, and he's reverting to form in terms of performing against expected goals. The same with his expected assists as well. Or alternatively, what he could actually do is he could actually overperform against his expected goal involvement in the next couple of games, because we know that's something that he is capable of and has been capable of in the past, and he could reset his delta that way, for example. So just based on what we know of Bruno for the number of years that we've been watching him in the Premier League. And so the question then becomes, if we think that's coming, and I think most people would argue that it should come at some point. I don't think there's anybody out there who is of the view that Fernandes is less of a good player at the moment. Of course, we have to say that the data we're looking at is only 2 games old, so there's lots of gaps in it, lots of ifs, buts, and maybes that we haven't discovered yet, for example. So there is that there to think about. But I think most people would largely agree with the view that he will eventually reset against this. And the question becomes, can he do that against Nottingham Forest? Well, now this is perhaps the trickiest part of this whole thing, because I think most people, when they look at the form of Bruno statistically, more so than Rashford, people are sort of quite happy to go, okay, this is a good fixture, and the form could be coming, so let's just give it a go. It's not quite as simple as that, because I do have to point out that Nottingham Forest's defence could potentially be in a bit of a transition in the positive direction. So let's have a look at how they got on last season. They were famously the worst team away from home last time out, and so of course at Old Trafford this weekend, maybe that form is going to continue. Across the whole campaign, they were 4th worst for big chances conceded. So they conceded 92 big chances across the whole campaign. Only Liverpool, Leeds, and Fulham allowed more than that. But there's a big but here. The way that they've started the campaign is almost to the opposite of that. So what I've got on the screen at the moment is the teams that are the 6th worst teams for big chances conceded so far. Aston Villa are at the bottom, but basically all of those came against Newcastle, and what we are probably expecting to be a bit of an anomaly statistically. But Fulham, joint worst, and even spread across their 2 games. Liverpool, Everton, Spurs, and Wolves in reverse order as the bottom 6. Where's Nottingham Forest? Nowhere to be seen. Unfortunately, for those who are sort of backing United this week, Nottingham Forest have actually, so far, statistically, been one of the least obliging defences in terms of giving up big chances. They actually conceded 0 big chances against Arsenal. Arsenal had to score both of their goals from situations that were not deemed big chances, were not considered to be high XG opportunities. Saka's goal especially was fantastic. It was a world-class goal had to be scored against this team. Then against Sheffield United, just the one big chance conceded, and again it took an incredible finish from the new blade Harmer to get past Turner. And so what that's all meant is that after the first 2 matches, the top 5 teams for fewest big chances conceded contained West Ham and Newcastle on 2 each, Brentford on 1, level with Nottingham Forest, and Man City, as you would expect, are yet to concede a big chance after 2 games. And yeah, Nottingham Forest are joint 2nd best for that, which is a bit frustrating. And even against Arsenal, away from home, where typically they were worse last season, they were able to limit Arsenal to no big chances. So it's a scary situation to be in for these United attackers, because the form, they haven't quite lived up to the stats they've been posting yet. Can they finally revert to form against Nottingham Forest? Well, against last season's Forest, you would put your house on that. But so far, we're not necessarily seeing evidence that they're whipping boys still, because there's lots of teams already that are conceding big chances at a much faster rate than them over the first 2 matches. However, there's one last area that could provide a little bit of hope, and that's where we're going to have a look at some specific matchups. So we can look at the numbers of where these shots are coming from for Forest, but let's have a look at the location of those shots and see if we can find any glimmer of hope. Are Nottingham Forest giving up chances or giving up assists in locations where Rashford and Fernandes so far have been offering the same? And so what we've got on the left-hand side of the screen is another extract from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. It is a chances created conceded heat map for Nottingham Forest over the first 2 games, and all of the different blobs represent where someone has created a chance against them. And the more aggressively red and orange that blob is, the higher the XA of that chance, the higher expected assist of that chance. And the bluer it is, the lower. And so what we can see from this particular image on the left is that largely a lot of the assists have come in and around the corners of the penalty box. That seems to be where Forest are conceding most of their attempted assists from. But there's a much higher... So what's really interesting here, actually, is that in terms of the raw numbers, they've conceded 6 chances down their left, they've conceded 6 chances down their right, and they've given up 3 through the middle in terms of shots, which we'll get to in a minute. These are just assists on the screen at the moment. But that obviously only tells you the numerical value, not the quality of those chances. And what we can see is that down their left-hand side, they are conceding higher expected assist incidents, so that the key passes being played on their left-hand side of defence are more likely, or have a higher chance of leading to a goal than the ones conceded down their right. Now, that is initially a little bit discouraging for those of us that have noticed that, of course, Rashford so far has largely been operating, he operates best as a left-sided forward. He has been operating as a forward so far, with his suggestions he could move back to the left wing. And then with Fernandes, largely his position has been quite central. But it's worth saying that, we'll start with Rashford on the right-hand side in terms of where his assists come from. We're not expecting much in the way of assists from him. You sort of have to flip this image in your mind if you're watching the video, because, we've got, they're at opposite ends of the pitch. But basically, so far, Rashford has created 2 chances down the right-hand side, just 1 on the left. So there's a small chance that maybe he can get himself an assist from this particular role. Let's have a look at Fernandes then. And unfortunately, he's had a higher concentration of attempted assists from the left-hand side in those areas where Forest have actually been limiting the quality of the chances they've been conceding. And then obviously some have come from set pieces for Bruno as well. So in terms of expected assists, that is a bit discouraging. Although it's worth saying that in terms of the actual touches for Fernandes, he has had quite a healthy conglomeration of touches in and around that area, that on the Nottingham Forest chances conceded heat map, they have been conceding chances from that area. So far, Fernandes hasn't been able to create in that zone, but he has been able to touch the ball there. And so it means that something's got to give there, and maybe there's a slight glimmer of hope. The key word being glimmer. Let's move on to the XG then. So this is an XG shot map conceded for Nottingham Forest. It's sort of similar to the heat map. In effect, the higher the XG of the chance that has been conceded, the bigger the bubble. If it's blue, it's on target. If it's green, it's a goal. And if it's red, it was a miss, off target. And so... that's for the attacking player. For the defensive player, it's green if it was off target, it's blue if it was blocked, and then it's red if it was a goal conceded. So basically, what you can see on the left-hand side is a sort of diagonal spread across the right-hand side that kind of starts just outside the box, somewhere between the left-hand edge of the box and the middle. That goes diagonally across and bleeds across into the left-hand side of the penalty box, which makes a lot of sense when you consider the quality of the chances they were conceding outside the box going into that zone. So that seems to be where they're offering up the most chances, and the chances that are the biggest. And there's quite a massive gaping gap on their XG shots conceded that have come from someone entering into the box and having a shot on the right-hand side of Forest's defence, which means that players that are having opportunities on their right-hand side, which would mean Forest's left-hand side of their defence, that seems to be where they're conceding their chances from. So can we find any Man United shots in and around that area? And thankfully, yes, we can. So when we talked about Rashford and his touch, where he's touching the ball and where he's operating, the interesting thing is, despite the fact that he typically operates better as a left-sided forward, as a winger, inside forward, whatever you want to call it, he usually does better on the left-hand side. So far, in this central role, it has created a situation where when he has moved to take his shots, they have happened to the right-hand side of a central area. And so what we can see, if you flip these 2 images in your mind, we've got 7 of these shots, and 5 of them have taken place on the right-hand side of the penalty spot, which puts Rashford's shot output so far in that weak zone that we can see in the Nottingham Forest defence on their right-hand side, which is quite encouraging, because it means that if Rashford continues to play and continues to operate in the way that he has done in the first 2 games against this Forest defence as it's operated so far, it is only 2 games, we do admit, but there's already an emerging trend here. it could mean goals for Rashford, which is encouraging. Then in terms of Fernandes, well, slightly less encouraging in terms of that particular weak spot. But the secondary weak spot here arguably is on the edge of the box towards, funnily enough, the left-hand side, which is actually where the predominant amount of shots for him has come as well. And so if you, as I said, if you flip those two images in your mind, you can see that there is a general trend of similarity between where Fernandes has had shots so far and where Forest have conceded shots so far. There is a link up there which could suggest that Fernandes could get some goals from that area, or at the very least, lots of efforts on goal. And then it's down to Matt Turner to decide the fate of how many points Fernandes is going to score. So hopefully that was useful for people. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing because there's a lot of maps involved there. But as I said, a lot of that comes from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. So if you want more information and be able to play around with some of those a little bit more, or maybe even run a similar exercise like I've done here for some different players. Lots of people are being talked about this week, such as Foden, Jackson, what to do with Watkins, for example. And so you can find out the answers to questions related to them using that little exercise we've done there in the members area. So make sure you get signed up ahead of the Game Week 3 deadline. Well, with that, I will leave you fine, folks, to enjoy the rest of your tinkering, and I will see you next time.